Nick from Seacon here. So just a quick video further to the video I previously did on the ESBE VRG range. So this one's just going to cover a bit of the setting up of the valve. It's something people tend to struggle with, but there is a dead easy way of doing it. So I've got two valves here. I've got a 130 valve and a 230 valve. If you're going to be setting up a 330 valve, it is very much the same as the 130 valve. Both I'm going to do for diverting applications, so it would be slightly different if it was being used for mixing. Hope you find this useful. Yeah. So what I have here is I have a 130 valve and a 230 valve. I'm going to go through both because the setting up of them is slightly different because the way we flow into the valve is different. Okay, so the 130 valve, the process would be the same for the 330 valve. Okay, so what I'm going to do is start with the 130 first. I'm going to put the 230 to a side. So first thing we need to do is position the shoe correctly. Okay, so we get a knob that comes with the valve itself. So what you can do is there is a little notch out the valve which indicates where the shoe is currently sitting. Okay, so we're currently sitting between these two ports. Okay, the knob slides on, yeah, and we can use that to then move that shoe around inside the valve. So what we need to next do is decide, or should I say, work out which outlet is going to where. So in the case of my application, I'm flowing in through here and flowing out through here or flowing out through the branch. Okay, so we're diverting between those two ports. Ports are marked, so we've got a triangle here, a square here and a circle. So my flow is going in through my triangle, out on the square or out on the circle. Okay, so what we need to now do is position the shoe so it's between the two valves we're going to divert from. So I'm going to move that so it sits so that the shoe in effect is half over that port and half over the branch port. So they're the two ports we're going to be diverting between. Okay, so that's that bit done. We can then remove that. The next step is to take our ARA head and fit it to the valve. Okay, so when we get our ARA head, the ARA actually comes set at 45 degrees. Okay, so that makes it dead easy because in effect the valve is now set between sort of at 45 degrees. So what we can do is we can simply remove the knob, yeah, locate it once we've put our castellated adapter on. So the castellated adapter has again a little notch and a groove out of it, which corresponds to where in effect the shoe is currently sitting. Okay, so once we've fitted that on, we can then take our ARA head and we can locate it onto the valve. There is then a screw that drops into place and we simply tighten that down, which then holds the actuator solidly to the valve. We can then take our control knob and fit it on and push it down. Okay, so that's now that valve set up. If I now take hold of the valve and I pull the knob slightly out to put it into the in-hand mode so I can manually move the valve. If I rotate the knob clockwise, we can now see that the flow through the valve is fully open. So if I was flowing in through the triangle, like I said, and in effect the square was out to the radiators, we would now have flow out to our radiator circuit. If I move the valve anti-clockwise, you can now see that port has now shut off and the flow is now going from the triangle to the circle. Okay, so that's how we would set up a 130 for a diverting application. So the important thing is to do all this before you put power to the head. If you put power to the head, it just makes it more difficult, because what you'll have to do is manually move the shoe to get it in the correct position that corresponds to the position the head is now in. So it's the easiest way is to do it out the box. As soon as you fit the pipe work, the valve in the pipe work, position the shoe in the position you need it between the two ports you're diverting from, and get the head fixed on before the electrician puts power onto it. Just makes it so much easier. Okay, so what we'll do now is I'll take this off and we'll just look at the 230. So the 230 is actually even easier to set up, because when you get these out the box, the shoe is already in the correct position. So it's the same thing again. So very much the same, looks the same. Difference with the 230 is, because it is a more of a traditional diverting setup, we're now flowing in through the branch and diverting out either end. Okay, so flowing in on circle and then flowing out on either triangle or square. Okay, so as I say, the shoe is a much larger shoe in these, because it has to have more coverage for it to work on that 90 degrees of rotation. Okay, so the shoe currently is sat against this back wall, and that's how it comes out the box. That is exactly where we need it to be for diverting out of these two sides. So what we can do again, take our castellated adapter. Okay, castellated adapter slides on. Again, it has that notch to show us where the shoe is currently sitting. Okay, we can take our ARA head. Again, the ARA head will be delivered in that 45-degree angle. Okay, what we can then do is we can go ahead and slide that onto the valve, make sure it's located. We can drop our screw in, tighten the screw down, and then refit our knob. Okay, so we'll have to turn a little bit when I tightened it down, so just have to find its position and then it slips down. Okay, so that's now in effect set up. So again, important to do it prior to the electrician putting power to the valve. If I now pull that head out into manual and I rotate it, so I'm going to in effect rotate it clockwise, what you'll see is the shoe will move and completely block off that part. Okay, so as we look at the valve now, flow would come in here and it would go out here. If I now rotate that anti-clockwise 90 degrees, yeah, it's now blocked off that part, and in effect we're now flowing in here and flowing out of here. So, you know, actually dead easy to set up. Important thing to do, get the shoe positioned, get the head fitted before the electrician puts power to it. Just makes it so much easier, less faffing around. Yeah, okay, so that's covering sort of setting up of those heads. Generally, if you're using either valve for diverting purposes, normally would suggest going with a ARA 2-point head opposed to one of the 3 points. The 3 points are more suited for mixing applications. 2 points are much easier to set up for diverting applications. Okay.